Hi, I'm Clara, and I'm going to talk about the so-called Korean economic miracle, or the miracle of the Hangang River. We're going to see in this video why I think a part of Korean economic growth can be explained with history and culture. Most people only know Korea for a limited number of reasons. Among the most quoted, the Korean War, LG, Samsung, or K-pop. When people think about the Korean economic development and growth, they often call it a miracle or a succession of happy events that led one of the poorest countries in the world in 1953 to become the 10th most developed country in 2020 as for nominal GDP. However, it is unlikely to believe that a country nearly destroyed by 35 years of Japanese occupation and 3 years of war could access such rapid growth accidentally, without already having a historical and cultural background suitable for economic development. Many economic articles and reports explain the keys to Korean economic growth. However, it is much harder to find any explanation on why Korean society adapted so fast and efficiently to this growth. In 1954, Korea was almost destroyed by 3 years of war and 35 years of Japanese occupation. Still, Korea experienced rapid access to democracy and economic growth in nearly 70 years to rebuild the country. The World Bank describes Korea as one of the few countries that have managed to go from a low-income country to a high-income country in such a short amount of time. Korea's GNP in 1961 was only $2.3 billion. Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world. In 2020, Korea became the 10th most developed country as for nominal GDP, becoming an economic miracle in the eyes of the world. But we know such an economic development cannot rely on a miracle, and economists have proven how Korea relied on very particular reforms and strategies to succeed. This video aims to showcase examples on how the Korean rich culture and historic background allowed the country to rise from the ashes in such a short amount of time. The Korean economy fast growth can be attributed to numerous factors. However, Korea's economic model is mainly described as a knowledge economy. As a knowledge economy, Korean economic growth relies on 4 pillars. A long-term investment in education and training produces skilled workers who can create new knowledge and technologies adapted to local and international needs. These investments in human resources and coupled with advanced information infrastructures and government initiatives that can lead to economic growth. After the Korean War and from the 1960s, rapid economic growth became a national priority. Access to industrialization in Korea meant learning to create a comparative advantage against world leaders at the time. As a result, Korea decided to design a new economic framework to focus on developing human resources and on building technological capabilities. Korea has an outstanding history of education and scholars. The Joseon dynasty is famous for its renowned scholars. Educational institutions, both public and private, were largely widespread in the country at the time. World-famous university like Songbuk-gwan University in Seoul, was already in 1398 Joseon dynasty highest scholar institutions. King Jongjo, the 22nd monarch of the Joseon dynasty, served as a political leader and an academic mentor for his ministers. He created new types of metal types and strongly communicated with Chinese scholars. His reformist vision eventually led him to become one of the greatest thinkers of that time. Confucianism spread widely in Korea from the beginning of the Joseon dynasty, becoming the new state ideology. The legacy of Confucianism remains a fundamental part of Korean society today. Although the Confucian culture of the Joseon dynasty allowed some Koreans of the time to become world-class scholars. Only the elite could have access to education. However, Confucian cultures believes in education for all and the development of personal virtues through learning. Therefore, the 1948 Korean Constitution, written after the liberation of the Japanese occupation, stipulated that the state has a duty to provide education for all. In the 1960s, the reduction of illiteracy and the creation of competitive scientific institutions became a top priority of the government, reminiscent of the Korean culture that always considers the welfare of the people to be paramount. The Korean tradition is illustrated with the creation of Hangul in 1443. Sejong the Great created Hangul, the Korean alphabet, to help the people who couldn't read Chinese characters. This decision of introducing a new comprehensive alphabet received backlash from the noble class, who disapproved large access to literacy. The original name of Hangul, Hunminjongum, literally means the correct sounds for the instructions of the people. Sejong the Great wanted to educate all people, regardless of gender and class. At that time, a ruler ruled for the people and not the other way around. This culture led to many reforms in modern Korea, implementing equal distribution of wealth and social benefits. The overall strong Confucian tradition places a high value on education, achievement, and loyalty to the nation. Korean vision of education as a prime mover of national development plays an essential role in Korea becoming a knowledge economy. As a result of considerable investment in educational infrastructures, Korea could eventually become a world leader in many sectors by the end of 1990s, such as memory chips, cell phones, automobiles, telecommunication, and shipbuilding. Here again, these specializations in these sectors are not random, and we can link them to Korea's historic invention and cultural success. For the past 7 decades, the country used knowledge as a key engine for economic growth. It is even said that Korea has an education fever, where multiple teenagers sacrifice their youth for high performances at the SAT. According to specialists, this educational model needs to change quickly to meet today's challenges. The 기적'이 is proof that Koreans were ahead of the time in terms of communication and telecommunication technologies. The 기적'이 is the oldest existing document produced through movable metal type. Printed in 1377, it is an outstanding example of the wisdom of Korean culture, which developed movable metal type for the first time in the world. The introduction of mass printing, broadcasting, and the internet followed suit worldwide. This historical affinity for advanced technologies make Korea one of the world's leading research and development countries. Korea is the 4th country with the most patent application in 2020, and the 5th country in terms of government spending on research and development. Korea moved fastly and successfully towards an information society. The country is still ahead of its time, with the world's fastest 5G network and the fastest internet connection speeds. Today, Korea is considered a global superpower in terms of mobile communication technology, and this success can be linked to a much older communication method. The Bongsu communication system was a communication network based on smoke signals and torchlights from beacon towers. The Bongsu system was used from the Three Kingdom periods and was improved during King Sejong's reign. The signal could rapidly alert central power and convey any message. Professors even say the Bongsu system communicated information in a similar way to how computers convey information today. Korea is equipped with an innovation and efficient communication infrastructure for a long time. The long history of education, innovation, and communication infrastructure in Korea eventually led world telecommunication conglomerates like LG or Samsung to become leaders in their sectors. With the COVID-19 outbreak, many everyday activities like working or socializing rely heavily on the internet and communication services. The Korean government has included high-speed internet on its list of universal services that should be available at reasonable cost for all people. Over the past 70 years, Korea has made efforts to open its border to international trade and competition. The Korean economy relies heavily on international trade and exports and is now relying more and more on its soft power, as Korean Hallyu is expanding worldwide. If many people in Western countries got to learn more about Korean culture in the past years, the country has been a commercial and cultural hub in Northeast Asia since the beginning of its history. The Three Kingdoms period is a relevant example of Korean cultural mutual influence on its neighboring country. Shilla kingdoms trade in both products and ideas shaped modern Eastern Asia with the spread of traditional medicine, silk, wool, ginseng, calendars, and clocks. Shilla evolved as a major hub for maritime trade in East Asia and eventually became a maritime power. Baekje Kingdom positioned itself as a global city connecting China and Japan for hundreds of years and became a major trade actor in Asia by building relationships with India and Vietnam. In the 4th century, Baekje began to spread Chinese literature and Confucianism, astronomy, and geographical knowledge to Japan. In more recent history, the organization of the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games and the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games demonstrates how Korea became a global cultural and economic power, recognized at the international level. More particularly, Seoul Games were a strong signal of Korea to the international public, showcasing Korea's fast recovery after the war. Although the growth of the Korean economy is unique and admired, it has not been without major setbacks. In 1997, Korea entered a financial crisis, owing largely to structural problems in its financial and corporate sectors. Contrary to predictions, the country recovered fast and the government adopted strong policy initiatives, turning the 1997 financial crisis into an opportunity for major, widespread economic reforms. There are still today some long-lasting effects of this crisis, but they didn't stop Korea's economy from growing. This unexpected return to pre-crisis growth indicators within a few years is symptomatic of Korea's history. The Korean people suffered under Japanese occupation for 35 years, and right after access to freedom, went through 3 years of war. In 1953, after the Korean War tore the country apart, Koreans were still able to reconstruct and access both democracy and economic growth in record time. This ability to be resilient and optimistic in the darkness of time may be one of the reasons why the Korean people overcame the 1997 crisis in record time. Korea is today a major economic power in the world and stands out more and more by its soft power. This results from 70 years of unique fast economy and social development, alongside access to democracy and becoming a cultural hub in East Asia. Part of this success can be attributed to the Korean historical and cultural past, where 5,000 years of history have allowed the Korean people to build the foundation for today's challenges. Korean society is known for its ability to adapt quickly, and it is easy to believe that Korea will make efficient reforms, as it has done through its history. Thank you!